Welcome back, college football fans. It's your boy, Coach I. As always, I got the stat guy with me. You back in for another episode of the Fan Addict on the Fan Addict Sports Network. We're here talking Utah Utes season preview. Let's get into it.
The Fanatic, where we keep it 100, keep it real. That's the only way we know how to be. Talking that sports talk, you know what I'm saying? Straight out of South Carolina, upstate, 864. Yeah, the FANATTIC, the Fanatic, where we keep it OG. We talking sports, so I call what I
We're back in here for another college football preview, man. This time the Utah Utes is up on deck, man. Stack out, how you feeling today, man?
Hey, feeling good. I'm excited to talk about Utah. We fell in love with them last year, getting to cover them, getting to dive in deeper to them, man. Looking forward to covering them and seeing what this season is looking like for them.
That's right, man. As a dog fan, man, listen, I definitely respect Utah. I like Kyle Whittingham. Their style of play is similar to the Dogs that utilize those tight ends, play a physical form of defense. So definitely like covering them last year, try to do a little bit more in depth this year. If you are new to the channel, me and the Stat Guy, we like talking college football all the time. We're doing season previews. Utah is one of the teams we'll be following along with this year, as like we did last year. So we'll be doing some game previews for you. Shout out to all the Utah fans, man, that joined the channel last year and followed along with us, and just put us up on some game and some info that we didn't know about Utah going into last year. So without further ado, Stat Guy, man, let's jump into this season preview, man. All right, man, the 2022 season review of the Utah Utes, man, they were 10-4 with another Pac-12 championship back-to-back, man. 10-4 with a loss to Penn State in the New Year's Six Bowl, man. I don't know. So I guess I would call that a disappointing loss, but Cam Rising did tear his ACL in that game. So Penn State, not for nothing, is a good team.
Yeah, I mean, Penn State's solid. And then, bro, just to hang on for dear life and to claw and fight to get into that Pac-12 championship game down the stretch. And then second year in a row, doubling up on somebody to win it. I mean, that's it's hard to beat somebody twice in the same year. So to do it for the second year in a row to win the conference, huge.
Especially a team as talented as USC on the offensive side of the ball, scoring those points. They were able to beat them in the season and in the championship. Actually beat them a little bit worse in the championship when it was on a neutral field. So their worst loss to me was the opening loss. This is where we learned from Utah fans last year that Utah – just kind of traditionally starts out kind of slow out the gates. I still felt like they had the better team. They were ranked number 7, though. They went to Florida. You and I both thought maybe the humidity would have something to do with it down there, but they did get they get some rain before the game that kind of cooled it all. So, and I think they handled it pretty well. It was just couple of third and fourth downs on goal line situation, then the interception on with 17 seconds left in the end zone by Cam Rising. Listen, it was a huge win for Florida, a disappointing loss for Utah. I think that to me was one of the most disappointing parts of the season last year. And then, but they beat USC twice, like I said, and USC, Lincoln Riley's first year, but that offense, everybody saw what the offense was doing to everybody else, and Utah was able to outscore them both times.
Yeah, no, that Florida loss, I think it might have been tougher for me and you to swallow than for Utah fans, because they were like, oh, man, we start slow, and we sitting over here trying to hit the panic button, like, what in the world is going on out west? But, not for naught, Anthony Richardson was the front runner for the Heisman after that game. He played out his mind. So, I mean, but again, you lose on a tough road game against a good opponent week 1. It would have been easy to fold the season up and go 7-5 or 8-4. And that just isn't who they are. And like you said, Kyle Whittingham is an amazing coach, and he got them right when it mattered the most.
That's right, man. So, hey, man, let's move into the next topic, man, talking about the transfer portal and recruiting. We'll also talk some offense, we'll talk defense, and then we'll talk 2023 season preview. So the transfer portal, man, they had 19 go into the portal, 8 people come out of the portal. Just who you think some keys, whether it be a loss or an addition through the portal. And then before you get to that, and recruiting, they were 21st overall, third in the Pac-12. So you could talk about recruiting and transfer portal, like just some key additions and some possible major losses.
Yeah, so for me, the big key addition, they went Coach Prime cleaned house in Colorado, and they went and got Cole Becker, Colorado's kicker. Was 11 for 13 on the year for field goals last year. Solid field goal kicker. He's coming in to be their starter in that position this year. And I think that's a huge add. When you're in close ball games, having a guy that has proven he can do it in the Pac-12, he's kicked in all the places they're going to play this year. So I think this is huge add for them, for somebody that can help shore up the field goal unit, and you don't lose a step. You just keep it trucking on that. You're not relying on an unproven freshman.
That's right, man. I got a couple of people, man. One of which is a Utah player that entered the portal, but then, probably after some talks and with his family and Coach Whittingham came out of the portal, and that's running back Michael Bernard. They had 200 Munster last year, and Michael Bernard was part of that. And I think that was a huge recruiting win, if you want to put it like that, to shore up that backfield. But, they added some good additions, man. You got Kincaid off to the draft at tight end, but they added Landon King from Auburn. You lost linebacker Andrew Matafa and replaced him. He goes to USF, but then they replaced him with Stanford's defensive captain in Levani Dumani. So I think they got some good pieces out of the portal, and not to mention Michael Pittman Jr. to go along with that wide receiver core out there from Florida State. So he's back in the Pac-12 because I think, if I'm not mistaken, he started at Oregon, went to Florida State for a year, and now he's back in the Pac-12 at Utah. JUCO tight end Dalen, I think that's it. If I'm saying that wrong, Utah fans, let me know. Dalen Bentley, 6'6", 250. JUCO tight end, man. Listen, again, I said it. I like the way they use those tight ends, man. So they got to keep them deep out there. So that's going to be huge for this year, man, because we got to see what Cam Rising is going to do, on that offense, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So how you thinking, like, with the transfer portal, man, and everybody using the transfer portal, how you think Utah fared in the transfer portal this year?
Yeah, I think that the key with the transfer portal for teams like Utah that are conference champions, that they don't need to reload, they just need to retool. And so the guys they lost, whether it be to the draft or to the portal, wanting to go closer to home or a bigger role, whatever the case may be, I feel like they did an amazing job of sliding guys into those roles where they're not going to lose production, or maybe they get even more production. You talk about getting Stanford's defensive captain, huge. Getting a field goal kicker, getting a Pittman to put on the outside. They added the pieces they needed to add to where it's like, again, you're not relying on these true freshmen or unproven sophomores that saw limited action. You got game-ready guys that are ready to help take you to a third straight Pac-12 championship.
That's right, man. I think you're totally right, man. Just basically gluing up any leaks that they may have instead of they don't have to rely on the portal to build a core, man. But let's jump into that offense, man. We all know Cam Rising and what he's been able to do, the past couple of seasons. He did have an ACL tear in that Rose Bowl. Now, physically, guys are recovering from ACL tears faster than they, because of modern technology, good doctors, things of that nature. The thing is the mental confidence that you have after an ACL tear. He's on track to be ready game one. We'll probably be limited in snaps in fall practice, but it's not like he doesn't know the offense. But Cam Rising is not like somebody that's trying to run all the time, but his legs definitely helped him out through the year. So, I don't know. What do you think about the ACL tear, man, and how it might affect? They got Florida coming in the house game one.
Yeah, the big thing is mental, right? We talk about with running backs and wide receivers and stuff a lot of times. We talk about it's not the first year. It's normally year two before they feel they're back to being themselves mentally. Is he going to be willing to tuck it and take off for that 5 to 7 yards to keep you in a positive position or to pick up a key third down conversion? The one good thing, they have a great running attack. They use their tight ends in the intermediate passing game. So the offensive line is going to be key this year for keeping him upright and giving him time to pass to where he isn't having to rely on the legs. But, man, it's all going to be mental. Can he play?
Yeah. I just think like they got a couple backups, Bryson Barnes, Brandon Rose. They got to be ready. You know what I'm saying? Hopefully they don't need them, but they need to be prepared just in case. Man, it's not because they definitely don't have a lack of weapons. Like I mean, we talked about a couple of them already. I mean, Michael Pittman Jr. Then you got wide receiver Bailey. Money Parks has big play capability, and then Jaquindon Jackson and Michael Bernard in that backfield, along with those slew of tight ends, man. So of course, still having Keithy out there, who's a matchup nightmare. They're gonna all have to rally around to help Cam Rising.
Yeah, and so I mean, in total, they do return 6 offensive starters from a year ago. 83% of their production from last year's back. Probably the guy that I circled that's going to be a key starter for them this year is going to be Colin Alulu Fayu. If I mispronounce that, please don't slay me, but is starting at center for him. And, saw no action last year, limited action. So brand new starter up front, kind of anchoring the offensive line at the center position. That's going to be key. And can he help get the protection schemes and everything right for him? So having a first-year center starter, luckily, Rising, it feels like, has been at Utah now for 19 years. So, he knows that offense and be ready to go.
Yeah, that's true. That offensive lineman have some experience, guidance, and some help alongside him with offensive lineman Santoa Laumia. Hopefully, Utah fans get us correct on these pronunciations. Utah fans, we definitely apologize, but he's a returning starter, all conference player. So it always helps when you're a new starter to have that experience beside you. Now, on the other side of the ball, on the defensive side, like I said, Whittingham's known for his defense, man, and I don't think Utah is going to lack for any defense this year at all. I mean, last year they led the Pac-12 in sacks and tackles for loss, and was second in total defense. They do lose Gabe Reed, who was the leader in sacks, and Diabate, who was the tackles leader. But they got people coming right behind them. Like I said, it's not like you got to rebuild or anything. The front seven is still going to be good with Kareem Reed up front, and that secondary is going to be super physical. They got all Pac-12 safety, Cole Bishop, a veteran group who added, another transfer we didn't talk about, Ole Miss transfer, Miles Battle, had 12 pass breakups the last 2 seasons at Ole Miss. So, I mean, they play physical back there. So I'm going to be honest with you, I'm really not worried about the defense.
No, I mean, the defense returns 8 of their starters and 69% of the production. You've talked about the transfers that they have coming in to shore up some of those areas where they lost a guy or two. And to me, the 2 big returners that I got are both on that defensive line. Defensive end Van Fillinger had 5 sacks last year, had 5.5 the year before. So he's going to be solid. And then the man right beside him at defensive tackle, Junior Tufa, he only had 1 sack last year, 3.5 tackles for a loss, but got a pick, just big body to help fill the middle and stop the run. And so you got 2 returning starters on the defensive line that have the production. You got the people you're adding. I think this defense is probably going to be the best that we see in the Pac-12 this year.
I think I'm with it, man. Between Utah and Oregon, man, I think those are the top 2 defenses, and definitely Utah's year in, year out, with their production on defense, man. So with that said, man, we've talked about the transfers and recruiting. We talked about, offense and defense. It's time to talk about what we think is going to happen with Utah this year. You know what I'm saying? We already mentioned how they start out with Florida the first game, but I guess just give me a couple of games, man, that might be key games to how this season turns out.
Yeah, I mean, starting Thursday night, August the 31st, got Florida coming into town, 8 p.m. kickoff. So, I mean, again, the Utah fans will tell you they're a slow starting team. Florida, we still don't know what their quarterback situation is going to look like. I mean, I think this game is going to rely on Utah's defense to win the game, especially depending on where Cam Rising's actually at. But I mean, how many times can you keep putting yourself behind the 8 ball to start the year? I mean, I know it's not a conference game, but at some point, Utah has to feel like they're close enough to get over the hump and make a run at the playoffs. And you can't do that losing week 1.
That's right. And just like, we mentioned the humidity for Utah going down to the swamp, I'm going to say in the opposite. It's that, that thin air up there, the altitude. And listen, if Florida fans don't believe that that's going to be, a problem, go talk to some NBA players that have to go to, they come from like Atlanta and Miami and have to travel, up to Colorado. I mean, not Colorado, but Utah to the Jazz and stuff, and how high that altitude is out there. So, listen, man, one thing for this season outlook, if they're going to look to, three-peat, I would say, as Pac-12 champions and have a shot to get to the playoffs, they got to be better on the road against elite teams. So they're 3-13, over the past 2 years, over the span of basically them running they run the Pac-12. You know what I'm saying? Versus away teams that are that finish with 9 wins or better. So basically the teams that are better in that conference. Some of those are bowl games. So I mean, I guess you can take that with a grain of salt. But either way, it's like when they're not at Utah, against the better teams, then they need to play better. And that leads into one of the games that I think is a key game, and it's at USC. That's on the road. We know USC is going to finish with 9 or better. So this is one of those games where they got to play better. And it's one of those teams, we say it's about 4 or 5, maybe even 6 teams that can challenge for the Pac-12. I think it's going to be the hardest conference this year. The schedule is not lending itself to a playoff type season, just because. And a second game at Oregon State, they got to go to Corvallis and take on the Beavers. And we already know how the Beavers are when they play in Corvallis. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, and that's difficult. And it's funny that you mentioned the road stat, because it leads into my second game as well, which is at Baylor week 2. Again, not a conference game. It won't have any outlook on them three-peating as Pac-12 champions, but it does have outlook on what they're trying to do as a season in a whole, if they're wanting to make a playoff push. I mean, again, Baylor was down from what we thought they were going to be last year. But again, you're going to Baylor, Texas. It's going to be hot as all get out still in September. And to make it worse, it is a noon kickoff. And so, and that's one of the things. It's like looking at that kickoff time, it's like, man, it might be 95, 100 degrees down on the field.
And that's crazy.
That's just brutal. September the 9th, just brutal. And so, but that's a game again. You're looking at, with their non-conference schedule, starting off with 2 Power 5 opponents. I think you got to have wins there. You can't start 1-1 or 0-2 and think that you're going to reel it in and lock back in during the Pac-12 season, because the Pac-12 is brutal this year.
It is. And I think Utah's to the point now where they should expect to try to be in the college football playoffs and not just winning the Pac-12, because they've shown time and time again that they can win the Pac-12. I mean, when I talked about being better on the road against better teams, they play Baylor on the road, they play Oregon State on the road, they play USC on the road, and they also play Washington on the road, another team that we think has a shot to win the Pac-12. Between Utah, Washington, Southern Cal, Oregon, possibly UCLA, and don't count out Oregon State to upset some people and maybe make a difference in the Pac-12. The Pac-12 is going to be brutal, and a fast start would help, the Utah Utes this season. All right, man, let's finish it up and talk about what we think the expectations should be for the ceiling and the floor for this Utah team.
All right, well, I'll start it off. I'll start with the floor, and I might be completely off basis, and the Utah fans might come and be like, if this happens, there's something went horribly wrong this year. But I have their floor at 8-4. I think realistically, that would not shock me one bit to see them 8-4. I know as a fan, I think I would be disappointed at seeing them finish 8-4, because I think they're a better team than that. But with this schedule, it could happen, and it could happen in a hurry.
Yeah, I agree with the 8-4 floor. I think if you're looking at 8-4, then maybe Cam Rising wasn't, all the way healthy the whole season or something, or maybe other integral part got hurt. I think, like you say, because of the schedule, they could be 8-4. Anything less than 8-4, we need to know what went wrong. You know what I'm saying? Like I feel like this Utah team is good enough that even if Cam Rising doesn't play all the games, they should at least go 8-4. You know what I'm saying? And now on the flip end of that, I think like the ceiling is 10-2. I think the ceiling is 10-2, possibly 11-1. Just like again, you can't start slow. You can't have that loss to Florida and then try to go 11-1. It's too hard to reel off 11 straight games. So if 11-1 or 10-2 is on the table, I think that Florida game is key. They have to start out, come out the gates a little bit faster, swinging at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, so 10-2 is kind of my expectation for where Utah is going to be this year. But I gave them an 11-1 ceiling because I think they have the talent and the depth offensively and defensively to make a push to get in the playoffs. And I think an 11-1 Pac-12 champion will find themselves in the playoffs regardless of what happens elsewhere across the country. So my ceiling for them is 11-1. My expectations 10-2. Regardless of how it plays out, I do see them playing in the Pac-12 championship and at least getting to defend their 2-time title.
Yeah, the only thing that's working against, in my opinion, the Utah run to the playoffs is that schedule. You and I have been talking since our Pac-12, win total preview that there's 5 teams that we think could legit win the Pac-12 in, Utah, Washington, Oregon, UCLA, and USC. Now, when you look at all of those teams' schedules, Utah is the only one that plays all other 4 in our who could win the Pac-12. They got to play UCLA, they have to play USC, they got to play Oregon, and they got to play Washington. So it's just like if you can navigate that and win the Pac-12, you deserve a spot. Like I said, 11-1, and depending on what everybody else does, I don't know, maybe a 10-2, but the Pac-12 hasn't been in the playoffs since Washington did it, so they may need to go 11-1 and finish, man. But Utah fans, hey, glad to have you back. Make sure you're getting in the comments. Tell us what your expectations are, what your realistic floor is, what you'll be disappointed if they don't make it, and then what the ceiling could possibly be. Let us know. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. For my man, the Stat Guy, this is Coach I. We out.
Peace.
I call my dogs out the pound, let's go eat. Turn on the fan at it, let's have a debate. Who really hold down the Southeast from state to state? What team hungry gonna eat everything up off their plate?